Elise, thank you so much for working on this doc with us. And I'd love for you to give us an intro behind the purpose and vision for this Coda template.
At our company, we help other companies transform their meeting culture. And the first step of that starts by understanding what your actual meeting culture is. It's super common for everybody to kind of complain that there are too many meetings or they're wasting their time or whatnot, but very rarely does anybody try to do something about it.
Gotcha. Who you think this template would be useful for?
Anybody who has meetings with the team on a regular basis can use this. And it's useful at the team level and the department level. If you're a team leader working within a larger group, or you're working at the division or department level, you can have everybody in your group run this together and then host that conversation.
Gotcha. So after someone copies this doc and shares it with their team, they do some pre-work.
Yep, they do some pre-work. So let's look at that first one, right? The first bit of pre-work is to do an inventory of your meetings. Now, it's not feasible to look at every single meeting you've ever had. So we look at that inventory over a 2-week time frame, and people literally enter all the meetings they had in those 2 weeks. And then we ask some questions about each of those meetings. We asked for 2 weeks rather than just one, so that we can capture a little bit of the natural ebb and flow of what happens in most companies.
So everyone that's shared with this doc, they enter their meetings. They only see the meetings they enter. And then the second pre-work step are some just general meeting questions. Is that right?
Yeah, some reflection questions. So what we find is when people do an inventory like that, some of the things that they have suspected were true maybe aren't true. Some of the things that they wondered about all of a sudden become a lot clearer. So this questionnaire is about capturing some of those insights that you see when you do the inventory, and then also providing just a little bit of context about how that relates to your role in the organization.
Right. So I can select my name here, and let's say I'm like a level 2 out of 5 in my organization, very high level. And then I can start writing in some answers to these questions, which we can analyze a bit later.
Most of these questions are fairly easy. You know, what do you notice? What works? What doesn't work? Pretty typical kind of feedback questions. The one question at the bottom that's a little bit unusual might require you to look at your calendar again. And that's asking, how many blocks of flow time do you have? So flow time is any time where you've got 2 or more hours altogether that you can spend doing other work.
Right. And this requires us to kind of look at our calendar and see where we have these blocks of time. Is that right?
Right. And you literally in the course of a normal working day. So we're not meant to be working on weekends most of the time, right? So we don't get to count our evenings and weekends or our vacations. But looking at that, do you have a block between 1 and 3? Well, that counts as 1 block of flow time.
Gotcha. So I fill out this form, hit submit, and that's pretty much the pre-work for an individual person on a team. Right?
So the first thing that people like to look at is time. We're wasting too much time in unproductive meetings. So too much time, well, what is that? So this first report summarizes up how much time people are actually spending in meetings and gives you a way to sort of see what that investment might be. So my data here is actually, it's correct because I used the features to suck in my calendar data from Google. So I did in fact spend lots of hours in meetings with lots of people and invested, therefore, basically almost $13,000 in meetings over the last 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you can change this dollar amount is changed depending on this average burden rate. This could be 150, whatever you think makes sense for your team.
Right. And if you're not familiar with average burden rate, that'd be something to look up. Your HR team will definitely have a sense of what that is, but it's essentially the hourly salary wage plus factor for things like benefits and facilities and all of that.
Gotcha. And the next one is about the level. Can you tell us more about what this is meant to capture?
So with 5 being the highest, so that's your CEO and your executives, and 1's being your entry level folks, what you should expect is that your folks who are frontline, delivery oriented, or newer on the job have more time available to actually deliver work. So they should have more flow time and less time spent in meetings. Whereas as you move up the organizational hierarchy, it is not uncommon for executives to spend 70 to 80% of their week in meetings and have less time available to do focused delivery work. So,
That's a lot.
a big number is not necessarily a problem. A big number might be entirely correct based on what you're doing in your job.
Right. So you're saying for most teams, the flow blocks will probably be higher here than the level 5s.
Yes, for most teams, right? I think in our case, we've got fake data, right? So I'm
Right.
the only one who actually entered real flow top block numbers.
Yeah.
So.
And then some other interesting reports are like this ad hoc meetings. Can you talk more about this as well?
Yeah, so a preponderance of ad hoc meetings generally represents a strong problem. Now, there are some exceptions. If you are salespeople, your customer success representatives, their job is actually to get as many ad hoc meetings as possible onto their calendar. So it's not always a problem, but this gives you some visibility into what might be going on there.
Elise has also added some information on what to look out for. And also, if you ever want to look into the detail about what all of your team members have submitted in terms of their meetings, one of the metrics you ask for in the meeting inventory is the effectiveness versus importance of meetings.
Right. So one thing we often find is that there'll be recurring meetings on people's calendar that they rate as highly ineffective. They're boring, they last too long, anytime there's a big discrepancy. The other thing we know, and the reason that you see in this report what the percentage of meetings that this person was a leader for, is that there's a fundamental bias built into how we perceive meetings. If we are the leader, we tend to rate them better than everyone else.
Yeah, I really like how this can uncover some hidden biases.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, I want to show the clarity of purpose.
We went through this ourselves when putting together this document. So when you look at the calendar, often you'll run into a lot of meetings that say things like management sync, right? This report highlights all of those meetings that are basically just saying, hey, we're going to have a meeting, and invites you to find a different way to name those so that the clarity of why that's a good investment for your team is clear at a glance.
Right. Okay. And then you could use this when you schedule your future meetings for management sync. This could be something more descriptive and give purpose behind that meeting. Based on that kind of survey and pre-work too, we have some additional results that the team leader or meeting leader can share with his or her team.
Yeah, so this is a template for literally running a conversation about what you saw and then making some decisions about what you'd like to change, which, as you can see, we've put in the name of this meeting, which before, when we did our first draft, was like discussion.
Right.
Right. Told you this template will walk you through essentially a retrospective where you look at what's going on in your meeting. So you've all had a chance to enter this data, enter your insights, review the results, and then see, okay, what else do we notice here and what notes should we take? And then make some decisions.
Mm-hmm. And this is all compiled from all the team members when they are submitting their meeting inventory.
There's places here where you can just add some notes as you go through the conversation. Now, the key, of course, is to end by taking some action. And best practice wise, I recommend that you identify, 2 or 3 things to change. Make them easy. Use the 80-20 rule here. Find the 20% of change that you can make that will make an 80% impact, and then run this again. So my team plans to run this quarterly to make sure that we're following our own best advice.